Orcs rule, yes? Or do they suck? Is this an orc? How about this? Is this true? Are orcs even monsters now? And why would anyone like this? The important question is, do you like orcs in fantasy? Because after my video about dwarves in fantasy, many commenters said that they prefer orcs. Why is that, and why these green brutes can be awesome? Let's try to find out.
The age of men is over. The time of the orc has come.
Hello, I'm Not-a-witchr. I'm not even sure that there are any orcs in the world of the Witcher. Should there be? But let's talk about orcs in other worlds.
I will not go into boring details like where does the word orc even comes from. Let's just agree that the most important sources that shaped the image of orcs in popular culture are The Lord of the Rings, Dungeons&Dragons, Warhammer Fantasy, Warcraft, and the Elder Scrolls aka Skyrim and the company. All other orcs are just variations of those. But whatever world they come from, orcs often have the same recognizable features. Their intimidating physique is what first comes to mind when you imagine orcs, right? Well, most of them. Or do you prefer Tolkien's orcs that vary in size and shape? Because he did not make any distinction between orcs and goblins, and all of them were originally smaller and weaker than men or elves. Saruman had to create his own breed of orcs to have any decent warriors, the Uruk-hai. The classic image of gigantic shoulders and torsos with rippling muscles comes from the Warhammer universe, and later was adopted and developed by Warcraft games. These orcs clearly prefer the upper body workout, but also never skip the leg day. Their bald heads can signify high testosterone levels, and the small size of the cranium part of their skulls only emphasizes their necks and jaws. As far as their attractiveness goes, it's a matter of personal taste. Many years ago, and I swear I'm not making this up, I heard a girl from my class saying out loud in a gym when looking at a muscular guy doing pull-ups, "If a man have a body like this, he does not need not just a face, but even a head." So I guess in some cases, shoulder size really does matter to some people. Orcs are the most muscular of all the classic fantasy races. No wonder many guys like their style. Orcs are always portrayed as armed and dangerous brutes. You don't mess with orcs unless you want trouble. War is the most important part of the orcish culture in any universe. Whether they serve an evil overlord, or fighting to expand their territory, or defending their homeland from the invaders, orcs will fight fiercely and relentlessly, if their morale is high. Strengths and battle prowess are the most significant features of orcs. For example, since they appeared in Dungeons&Dragons, well, actually I'm thinking half-orcs, these guys were the only player race that had considerable strength and constitution bonus, which made them perfect candidates for the warrior class. And the full orcs were one of the first monsters in D&D described as tribal and warlike cave dwellers. But not anymore! We all know that in the Lord of the Rings universe, orcs are evil invaders, commanded by an arch-evil ruler, but even at the time when there was no overlord above them, because Sauron was taking his time to return to Middle-earth, they spent their time in pretty much the same way, raiding and killing free peoples of Middle-earth without some higher authority. In the Warhammer Fantasy universe that was created in the 80s, the orcs are the main part of the greenskins faction, and their war tendencies are even more explicit. Merciless and aggressive conquerors, Warhammer's orcs know only constant war and nothing else, and also their spelling is shit. However, later, The Warcraft games took orcs in a slightly different direction, showing them less like a green tide of mindless bloodthirsty brutes and more like an indigenous people with tribal society of hunters and warriors. To summarize, orcs are often an embodiment of a power fantasy, because they are very powerful, and that is what many guys like in them. Another appealing feature of orcs is that they are very simple and straightforward dudes, and they don't take no bullshit from anyone. They live simple lives, they hunt, they raid, they kill their enemies, and they're not constrained by any social construct like politeness or politics. Simple-minded, yes, but that gives them freedom, for with much wisdom there is much sorrow. The more someone adds to knowledge, the more someone adds to grief. The same probably goes for grammar. A barbaric way of life is something that many guys find appealing, like the wildlings from the Game of Thrones. Remember Tormund? And if someone oppresses orcs, takes away their freedom, it makes them much more relatable. It turns them from bullies to underdogs. And everybody likes the underdog, right?
We will never be slaves!
Like for example, the orcs from Warcraft, who were enslaved twice. First by demons in their home world, who corrupted orcs and used them to invade Azeroth. And the second time by the Alliance, who, after defeating the Horde, turned survived orcs into slaves for hard labor. That is where their story actually starts in Warcraft 3, with a young shaman named Thrall leading his people to freedom and to the new home in the West. Or another example, orcs from the Elder Scrolls, the world of Tamriel. There they have always been hated and despised by all three human races of Tamriel: Bretons, Redguards and Nords, with the capital city of Orsinium regularly being destroyed throughout the history. So, if you like wild barbaric people connected to nature and struggling against oppression, then you're probably not thinking about Tolkien's orcs. Even the Tolkien's orcs, the most pathetic kind of orcs, have some sense of self-worth and pride. They have some social structure and hierarchy, and some of them clearly believe themselves to be better than other orcs. But I'm mainly talking about the honor of the noble warriors that are the Warcraft orcs. Loyal to their chief and clan, they value honesty, strength and tradition. That's why they get along with their neighbors, Tauren, so well. These orcs are not the traitorous, murderous degenerates like Tolkien's orcs, and thus they are much more relatable. Another example is the honor of the master craftsmen that are the Orsimer from the Elder Scrolls games. You probably know that in Tamriel there are no dwarves, because they have mysteriously vanished in ancient times, leaving behind only their underground ruins filled with steampunk. And orcs in the Elder Scrolls games have many features that usually are attributed to the dwarves in other fantasy universes. They are the best blacksmiths, known for their excellent heavy armor. They build massive stone fortresses in the mountains. They mostly live in the northern snowy region of Hrothgar, and they have clans and even beards. Oh, and also they are technically elves. Seriously, in the lore of this world, they come from the followers of Trinimac, an ancient elven god who was defeated and cursed by another god, Boethia, and this curse has made all his followers into orcs as they are today. So now there's the Altmer, the Bosmer, the Dunmer, and the Orsimer, who are all practically cousins. And the last but not least reason why guys like orcs is the opportunity to touch your inner evil side, if you acknowledge its existence or even if you don't. Some anger issues can be amended by releasing the frustration and aggression, if even in an escapist form of fantasy. Somebody has wealth that you desire, you kill them and you take it for yourself, satisfying your inner beast. Somebody has offended you, You destroy everything they love and get your revenge without the moral aspect of it because you're an orc. It's just your nature. And if you happen to have some fun in the process, it may even raise your mood and help restore some inner peace, so you may return to solving the real-life problems with a renewed vigor. At least that is how I understand the appeal of evil playthroughs in RPGs that give you this option. Well, what do you think? Have I forgotten something?
Well, that's my ideas about orcs in fantasy. Thank you for watching this. Consider subscribing to my channel. I'm still Not-a-witchr, and as always, take care and farewell.